My name is Herb. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to our Big Book 12-Step Zoom workshop. Please join me in prayer for an open mind and an open heart. God, please set aside everything that I think I know about myself, my brokenness, the 12 steps, and you, for an open mind and a new experience of myself, my brokenness, the 12 steps, and especially you. Please join me in the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. So we've been looking at step 4, inventory, for a long time. There are 3 components in the big book: resentment and fear and sex. As a result of my doing the work several times with several different mechanics, as well as becoming acquainted with and understanding Bill's expanded model in the 12 and 12, step 4, I really recommend that if you haven't read step 4 from the 12 and 12, that you do that. He talks about instincts gone awry. And as you know, I use the model from biology of fight, flight, and freeze as survival instincts, translated into psychological emotions of anger and fear and shame. So the way I approach it is a little broader than Bill's in terms of that 3rd component, but it's completely compatible with and correlated with this 3rd primal basic biological instinct of freeze, translated into shame, translated into dishonesty. And that was the major component in my sex inventory. That's the assignment for next time. We're moving on now. Assignment 16. Just the number 1 part. Reading, it's a page and a half. You'll notice that it indicates to read to about halfway through page 70. The balance of page 70 and all of 71, it's a half a page, are on a summary of the overview process. It's a conclusion that Bill comes to, and I'll talk about that next week as part of the following assignment. Next week, I'll unpack the instructions that begin on page 68 all the way to the middle of page 70 in the big book. So I'm only asking you to read and highlight, not to do anything else. If in fact you wanted to begin making a list, that's fine. A list of your sexual encounters, whether that's with yourself or others, or inanimate, such as pornography. And if you've done a sex inventory, then go back to when you completed the time frame when you completed that up to the present moment. If you've never done a sex inventory, then go back to your first memories or experience in terms of applying these instructions, these suggestions. I'm not asking you to do anything else, but this is the frame of reference. If you have done a sex inventory before, but these instructions are different, broader, deeper, or just plain different, then you might want to include some of the work that you did in prior sex inventories. But again, more of that as part of the unpacking next week. Today, I'd like to have you focus on your fear inventory. I have no rules. I'm just trying to help you navigate finishing the fourth step. And that's really my counsel to you. Do you want to finish the fourth step? It's not a trick question. Because if you want to finish it, then you need a plan. And the plan isn't, I want to finish. The plan isn't, I'll get to it when I can. I'll get to it when I have time. No, that's not a plan. That's a fantasy. A plan is like a blueprint. You've heard me say it before. It's specific. I'm going to work an hour a day. I'm going to work an hour a week. I'm going to do one column 3, column 4 a day. I'm going to do one column 3 or 4 a week. Whatever it is, it's a plan. It doesn't have to create stress or tension in your life or cripple you from a burden and of a conflict with your personal life, your business life, your family life, your whatever. It doesn't have to get, and it shouldn't actually. It should fit in some way. If it's a priority to finish. You've been probably working on column 3, column 4. You may not have finished it. You're exposed to the fear inventory, but you may not have done substantial work, or you may not have finished it. It may be that you want to move ahead and finish your fear inventory. It's so easy to do, quite frankly, much easier than the resentment inventory. And then when I review and discuss with you my experience and understanding of the sex inventory, you'll see that, again, it's not very analytical. And I don't care how busy you've been. You'll be able to get it done in 2 or 3 hours. Yeah, really, seriously. Because once again, I'm going to help you shape it. Because it doesn't matter what your personal history is. The patterns are not going to differ. The motivations are not going to differ. The principles are not going to differ very dramatically. And that way you will have finished the fear inventory and the sex inventory, which will give you a sense of accomplishment, which then might motivate you to bring the resentment inventory to conclusion. I've suggested that you do 5 or 10, a maximum of 20 column 3, column 4s on 20 different institutions and or people. I hope you just heard me. You might have 50 resentments, different people, different institutions. I have suggested, I don't have any rules, but I have a suggestion that you focus on the white shark, the substance of the substantial ones, and that you do a maximum of 20 of them, because I think your experience will be that once you do up to about 5, you'll see a pattern and you'll see repetition. And so if you do 10, it'll just confirm that. If you do 20, it'll become boringly redundant. And any more than that will be the same. There's very little nuance after 20. There might be some after 10, but it won't contribute much to your turnaround and or your desire to change from what perhaps you've already experienced in doing 5 or 10. Now that was 5 or 10 or 20 different people or institutions. That wasn't 5 or 10 or 20 pairs of column 3, column 4. You may want to do 3 or 4 or 5 on mom and 3 or 4 or 5 sets of column 3 and 4 on dad. That would be 2 resentments that you will have unpacked in column 3 and column 4, but you will have done in that example a maximum of 10 sets of column 3, column 4. This isn't about numbers, but I'm trying to help you with the mechanical part for the planning purposes. My experience was it took me 15 to 30 minutes to do a column 3 and 15 to 30 minutes to do a column 4. Once I got the hang of it, once I broke the code, once I got some competency with it. So what we're talking about is an hour per set. No, 2 hours per set. Did I say 15 to 30 minutes per? No, 1 hour. That's wrong. 1 hour per set. And that allows me then to say, well, I can allocate 2 hours a week or 4 hours a week or whatever the planning is. But please be specific with your plan if you want to finish. And then once you have a plan, talk about it to your sponsor or step guide. Yeah. Not as a commitment, target date, hard, firm, no, there's no, don't create any additional stress to your life. But a target date is something that can in fact shift, but it at least gives you an accountability measure to give some teeth to the plan that you have and the accountability that you've engaged in. It correlates with the planning of doing your fifth step, of course. We're going to come to the fifth step startlingly fast now. It's like within 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be talking about the fifth step, and that'll be one workshop. We'll talk about the sixth and seventh step, and that'll be one workshop. Before you know it, we'll be on the eighth step, and that'll be one workshop. And before you know it, we'll be on the ninth step, and that'll be 1 or 2 workshops. If you just did the math, that's about 6 workshops away that we're going to be in the conclusion of the suggested from the big book on the completion of steps 1 through 9. We'll finish the workshop sometime, I believe in June. I'll revisit that, and next week I'll give you a specific target, a time frame with regard to the steps. I do have it mapped out so that I don't get lost and bogged down in a particular area, and I can keep moving the group forward. Some people don't finish the 9th step by the end of the workshop. Some people don't finish the 4th step by the end of the workshop. And then they either do the work with their own sponsor or step guide on an individual basis and moving forward so that they do finish both the 4th and 5th step on the one hand and the 9th step on the other hand. That's my prayer, that you have a commitment to finish the 9th step. Or they register again for the workshop as a listener next year and participate that way as an accountability group, supporting them while they're finishing the work. Not that they're redoing 1 through 9. No. They're just finishing up where they are, as using the listening group as a support group.
I would like to talk about a fear.
Yes.
And I did do the fear worksheet. And when I did my sort of fear inventory through the different times of my life, the fear that came up almost every one of them was a fear of people.
All right.
And when I looked at that, when I sort of pulled it apart and said, well, what is it that I fear from people? And it's stuff that others have said. I'm afraid that people will laugh at me. I'm afraid that I will be embarrassed. I fear that I'll be judged, that I won't know how to behave or what to do or what the answer is. I also fear that people will, that I'll be left out, that I won't be included, that I'll be found out, that people will see me for the fraud that I am. I'm afraid that I will disappoint people. And it kind of comes down to shame. There's a lot of shame around my experience with people throughout my life. And then in looking at what behavior is manifested when these things come up, I found that I kind of become hyper vigilant. I'm always on the lookout very defensive to protect myself from the things that I fear will happen. I know that I know what people are thinking because I'm a mind reader. So I predict that what they're thinking about me, or I predict what their motives are. If they're being nice to me, what's going on there? There's a lot of pessimism. It really sort of underscores my sense of unworthiness and my I'm not sure what that word is, mistrust and paranoia. And the actual behavior is I do tend to get closed up, and I avoid situations where I think that I will be at risk. Another one that was really interesting that came up when I was doing this list is that sometimes I have outrageous or almost, really outrageous behavior. It's a way of distracting. In fact, it's so bizarre because it really is calling attention to me, but it's distracting from what I'm afraid of, if that makes sense. And there's a lot of clownish behavior. Mm-hmm. And I do revert to old scripts and old untruths automatically. And there's some panic involved, a lot of self-pity and irrational judgment of other people. I feel blocked and limited. And again, the avoidance, and it leads me very routinely to my addiction. It leads me into the things that relieve me of my discomfort.
Right.
And what is the opposite of the fear? It's confidence, it's self-assurance, it's being able to be present and aware instead of living in that shroud and that fear. It's trust and acceptance. It's belief. This was an interesting one for me too. Belief in the goodness of other people. And I do believe that everyone is kind of like me, and I'm, essentially a good person. I believe they are too, and I believe that's how we connect, is through that core grain of value. And yet I have all these crazy fears. It's bizarre. The opposite would be a sense of belonging. The opposite would be to find the humor in things. And and being able to be a little bit lighter and not so serious. And the last one is what virtue would be manifest. What behavior would this virtue manifest? I just feel like if I could get to that place of trust and acceptance, and I would enjoy my relationships more, that I would be able to participate in an honest way with other people. Because I do feel like a lot of times I've got so many walls built up and so much protection built up that I'm not authentic a lot, that it would result in growth, and it would move me toward whatever my purpose in life is, whatever my purpose in the community is. I would be able to get closer to that, and it would bring me that stronger sense of kindness, compassion, and empathy.
So you've been very thoughtful about this exercise. What's the outcome for you? What's your experience with it?
It was pretty, like I said, some things that came up, I didn't expect them, and it sort of changed it up for me a little bit. It gave me a different way to confront the fear. And I have to say, it's so old and it's so ingrained. not aware of it, obviously, most of the time, but trying to be intentional and trying to be aware. I volunteer at a food pantry, and some of the people there kind of, I have difficulty with them. And it comes down to feeling that they judge me and that they, whatever. But after I did this exercise, I was at the food pantry one day last week, and it allowed me to engage in a different way with a couple of people. Again, to be a little bit kinder and less judgmental, but also to feel like this is so weird. I felt like they did value me. And I hadn't felt that before. I felt like they tolerated me, but I didn't feel like they were accepting me.
What changed then as a result of your doing this wonderfully insightful, thoughtful, expansive work? You went down there and you had a different experience. What changed for you? Are you aware of whatever shifted for you?
I do think that I was aware, and having that awareness, I was deliberately present, and I sort of shed all of the presumptions and was looking for a way to engage instead of looking for a way to protect.
Exactly. That's the turnaround. I was there looking at them, to hear them, to see them, not there to protect myself. The turnaround is from the self-centered focus to an other-centered focus. Yeah, that is exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, no, it's very cool. And I'm really glad that you spent the time unpacking it with us for us, because I think it's a model of it. And it's turning to be less defensive. I do want to just say this, just so that we're not naive about it. Trust is earned, not given. So yes, you can believe all you want that people are essentially good. And then you test it out cautiously, because some people aren't. Some people are twisted emotionally and or some other mentally, perhaps. All right. So you need to, as a wisdom person, you evaluate the arena and the people in it to make sure that it is safe for you to, in fact, be what you just said, rather than defending yourself. That's all. I don't mean to put the walls back up at all, but I am saying, sort of balanced approach. My wife said it to me, trust is earned and never given. And when I asked her, so how do I earn it? She said, with consistent behavior. All right. And so what you saw in the place that you went to was you saw the people and you were a little bit focused on them rather than mostly focused on yourself. And it had a whole different experience. But you trusted the people in that environment. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You had prior experience with it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. That is, I do see that there's a couple of levels of this. It's not universal. Not all people are, should be trusted. But where I was coming from was I trusted so few, or I was,
exactly. Yeah.
So yeah. So that's an important piece. Yeah. Thank you.
One of the breakthroughs for me was I read a book that's probably more visible here on the West Coast because it was about an author, Chuck C., A New Pair of Glasses. And in that book, he relates his turnaround was wherever he went, he asked, how can I help? In his own mind, let alone in his speech. With his family, how can I help you do what you want to get done? He owned a business. With his employees, how can I help you get what you need to get done? With his customers, because he was the primary salesman, how can I help you get done what you need to get done? And they knew that he meant it. It was authentic. It wasn't a manipulative thing, that he was really, really interested in helping them. Well, of course, he became very successful in his family, in his business, and with his clients, because, in fact, they trusted him. So that's been almost a mantra with me, or at least the model of a mantra, going to meet anybody in any circumstances. How can I help contribute to this person or this environment?
I like it.
Well, it takes the focus off of me. How can I defend myself?
No, I know. How can I protect me?
Yeah. Or how can I get my needs met when I'm not disregarding myself, but I'm taking the focus off it. I am the center of my universe. I am just not the center of the universe.
Oh, I like that.
Well, it's a life-changing perspective. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
I wanted to do a fear worksheet.
All right.
So name the fear. I am not enough. I don't do enough. And then why do I have it? Just stop me if you.
Go ahead.
I am looking outside myself for my value. 3, what behavior is manifest? I overdo service. I have too many projects going on. Some of them I really have to do, like estate planning. Like now, because our kids are still 15-year-old daughter. Taxes. I don't stop working on these tasks when it's bedtime, or I work on them too much and then escape, like watch a TV show until 2 a.m. I don't talk to my husband in the evening because I'm researching online. I may use these projects to avoid reality and not feel my feelings. I get into too much detail. I do projects that are nice but not necessary. I do chores to make up for the fact that Bob earns the money. I'm not working. Name the opposite of this fear. God will give me time and energy to do what is necessary work. Next right step, peace, self-esteem, and trust. Which I don't have much of.
And if you trusted, what would the behavior look like?
I would just get on my knees and say, God, I feel crappy about myself. Please help me not, engage in that behavior, listening to those voices in my head.
All right. Yeah. And you've done the work before, I think. So have you done any work recently in this context with step 6 and 7 in terms of specific prayer for the removal of these defects?
No, I'm only doing resentment prayers right now.
All right. Well, you have 1 or 2 defects that you just mentioned. There's no reason that you couldn't use that 7-step prayer, praying specifically for its removal. Because I can relate to it. Most of us can. What you're talking about is too much activity, which is a distraction. It's a cover. The compulsive behavior is part of the addiction dynamic. Once you start, you cannot stop, about work and about even recreation, because, quote, I deserve to have some fun watching television brainlessly, mindlessly. And then it's 2:00 and it's like, oh shit, I didn't want to do that. and then you feel horrible the next day, and the cycle just is perversive. And it's a total overcompensation for not having balance in your life. And of course, trusting God in prayer is one sense of balance, but then trusting your sponsor or accountability partner is another, where you talk to a person on a regular basis. I don't know whether that's daily, weekly, or monthly, depending on the difficulty. My sense is, in terms of step 6 and 7, that was what changed my behavior. My behavior changed within 48 hours of praying and holding myself accountable. And as we talked about earlier, the inclination changed after 2 years of consistent praying and accountability. But you need to get clear on what you want and what a balanced schedule would look like, right?
Yeah.
What would you say would be the underlying source of this fear behavior?
I don't know if this is the underlying. I have no intrinsic value.
Yeah, that's how you started out. I'm not enough. That's how you started out. It was a wonderful insight right at the beginning.
Others must validate me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to look for activity. I'm going to look for success. I'm going to look for tasks. I'm going to look for approval. But the source is I'm not enough. Yeah. And then I guess a way of turning that around is writing out a description for yourself as, what would I be if I felt enough?
That's a great idea.
I don't recall ever giving that advice to anybody. So it's just it's a new kind of nuance to this work. Although it's embedded in, of course, the turnaround.
Can I read what behavior would the virtue manifest?
Sure.
Would that be right? Okay. I would ask God for the next right step and do it. Like, that's been coming up a lot because I am my sponsor. I am accountable, and she is, on my case, on top of me about this. Like, I, move my feet concept.
Right.
I would stop when the compulsion to overwork begins.
Well, can you?
No.
Yeah, exactly. Let's be realistic.
No, and I beat up myself about that because that's the only way I know to.
No, it hijacks us. So once you're in it, you're lost until you're not. Yeah. No, it's going to run
suffering.
It's going to run its course. Yeah. And so at 2:00 you'll wake up and, oh God, I got to stop this. And you will, but it's too late at that point. Yeah. Of course. And then you get a chance to do better tomorrow.
Right.
That's all. Yeah.
And I also wrote I would be compassionate with myself when I can't stop working or escaping into wasting time activities.
Yeah, be careful with the being compassionate about yourself. That sounds like cutting yourself too much slack.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, yes, if you mean it in the sort of the balanced and healthy context, but no, if it's just some sort of, how would you say, cutting yourself slack.
Right.
But there's the balance that you can't figure out, and that's where an experienced and wise step guide and sponsor can help you out.
Right. And then I just wrote I would spend more time with my husband and I would do joyful things.
Okay, then what you might ask him is, what would he like and what would be enjoyable for him? Even more specific, when and that kind of thing. And then you said joyful activities. Make a list. What brings you joy? Get really clear. It's really helped me. Yeah. All right.
Thank you so much, Herb.
Well, and the takeaway from my standpoint of our conversation for everybody is be specific. It's wonderful to set up general vision statements. That's great. But then put some teeth in it, put some behavior in it, put some specifics in it, make it real, tangible, tasteful, something that you can literally grasp. Yeah.
Thank you, Herb.
Question right now. Only two fears: fear of falling and fear. What was the second one?
Loud noises.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. I would like to do a fear. The exhaustion one where you just keep going. Yep. Okay. Could I do that? Okay.
I call it the unpacking because it's like we keep going deeper. We keep going deeper. We keep peeling that onion until we get to the core issue.
Okay.
Let's try it.
Well, I will say this is my biggest fear, and it's mine. So I'm afraid of Stan, my son, dying.
Yes. How old is he?
21.
All right.
My only son.
Got it.
And I go, why? I've never loved anyone as much as I love him, and I can't survive that pain.
Yep.
Why does that scare me? I'll suffer until I die. Life will be meaningless. Why does that scare me? I feel like it's redundant. I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. Just
okay.
Yeah.
Why does that scare me? I'll walk around a shell of a person. Why does that scare me? I'll find no more joy in this world. Why does that scare me? I'm not as strong as other mothers who have lost sons. Why does that scare me? It will show me that life really was just a cruel joke, the ultimate gotcha. And why does that scare me? Everything I think I believe about God is bullshit, and I'm really just full of fear, a phony that spouts gratitude for life, and that my core isn't solid. It's as vacuous as I once feared before AA. And why does that scare me? It means I haven't grown, that I'm still a scared little girl, afraid of the world taking what I love. Why does that scare me? It's all a sham. Everything happy will be obliterated by a sadness that I cannot endure. And why does that scare me? I'll be lost with the only choice to go forward and find some small kind of deeper meaning, bearing the sorrow, or I die myself. And what scares me? That I'll eat, that I'll drink, that I'll take pills, that I'll numb out and turn over to the disease that was always there patiently waiting.
All right. Does it go any further?
No.
Well, but see, you got to. I mean, you did a tiny little bit of circular there in the middle, mm-hmm. but it was a drill down circular, and you got really underneath it to the sense that I don't really have a deep meaning of life, and I will go back into my addiction to numb out.
Yeah. That all this gratitude and all this is just shallow. It's not real.
All right. So, but what is your experience of writing it out and then coming up and saying you wanted to do it and this is the most meaningful one for you, and then reading it out? What's your sort of overall impression of that in terms of the source of your fear?
I don't think I understand the question.
Okay. The purpose of this process is for you to come to the exact nature of your fear, the source mm-hmm. of your fear. Can you answer a question? What is the source of this fear?
That my faith is not solid.
And what does Bill say in the big book on page 68? The source of fear is lack of trust.
Yes.
In God. I
don't trust.
So your problem is a step 3 problem. That's where the fear comes from. Remember this?
Yeah.
Trust God or have fear, which is dominant in your life. If you have this fear and it's interfering with your life, it's because you don't trust God. it's an invitation for you to revisit step 2, step 3. What is it that you really believe about? That's a rhetorical question for you to bring into your prayer and meditation and writing and maybe conversations with your sponsor and revisit steps 2 and 3 of the work that you did. It's not going to be very satisfying. Because as I said, faith, step 2, faith is a decision. There's nothing concrete about it.
Right. But then you had also talked about looking back and seeing where faith and where God had worked for you in your life, right? And so I can look back and see, the work, the hard work, the struggle, the payoffs, the abundant life I've gotten, right?
Yeah. And so here's where you would, I'm sorry, where were you going with that?
On the one hand, I'm afraid it's a house of cards. And on the other, I know that it isn't.
How are you going to navigate?
It can't be.
So well, it could be, but how are you going to navigate that? Yeah, that's the question, and you're hearing it. Yes, that's your dilemma. Yes, that's why you have fear. You have literally that existential dilemma. It's real for you. Yep. And there's where you go then over to the worksheet in the Way of Life document. Did you do that?
Well, I'm kind of stuck. Do you have a minute to just go?
Wait. Get over this language you're stuck. You're not stuck. So let's see what happens here. What do you got?
So name the fear that Stan will die.
Yeah.
Or should I say that Stan will be, well, no, I can't say taken from me because he's living his own life, but Stan will die.
Yeah.
Okay. Why do I have it? Because I don't trust.
Trust what?
That my higher power has,
I don't trust God. I don't trust life.
Nope. Okay.
Yeah, we don't need God here.
Right, because if I'm saying that life is just a big gotcha. Okay.
Right. And what behavior goes with that now? There's a critical question. The third question on the sheet.
Trying to control his circumstances.
All right. Yeah, you know what that means. We don't need to know what that means, but you know what that means. All right.
Right. Okay, so the opposite of this, the opposite of this fear has got to be some kind of faith. It has to be. That's the only thing I can think.
Yep. All right. Fear and trust, right. Faith and trust.
Trust.
Faith and trust, both together. Yeah. No, it's not just the trust. It's the faith part that probably is the weakest in you.
Yeah.
And if in fact you had faith and you had trust, if you really did believe that there was a power that was absolutely unconditional love, universal goodness, if you actually really believed that and trusted it, meaning you lived your life that way, all right? Mm-hmm. What would be the behavior?
I would stay present. I would stay present in this day, in this moment. And that's how I would talk myself, to myself.
And that's how you would deal with your son. I would enjoy him to the amount of ability he has and time available on a daily basis. Yes. Yeah, because life's in session.
Yeah.
And things happen. So you have no matter what you think or believe or how hard you try, you have no control.
Right.
You don't control your breathing. You don't control your heartbeat.
Nope.
Right.
Nope.
Right. That's why I love the Serenity Prayer. It's really that prayer that we don't have any control, but we have influence. Very little. Do you have any influence over the traffic pattern on your local freeway?
Nope.
No.
Well,
And
I live in the mountains now.
well, there you go. Right.
No.
So,
Okay.
all right. So as you wrote it out, and now as we've discussed it out, what's your overall sort of experience with this process?
It's brought me back to my gratitude and my recovery, that this is
Yeah.
that this is real, that this is not, it's that the joy and gratitude I feel in life is real. It's not vacuous.
Right.
And that I can trust that everything is.
Yeah. The only real choice that you have is to enjoy your son on a daily basis.
Right. And I do. Yeah. When he calls,
Well, even enjoying the thought of him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not getting frustrated when he doesn't call.
No. Right.
Because I've got a son, he's 48. I call, I text every day. I get a return about once every 4 or 5 days. Well, he's a busy man. He's a busy family guy. He's got a business, etc. And he knows I'm okay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got time and he doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know the greatest gift I give him is him knowing I'm okay.
There you go.
So he can just live his life. Yeah.
That's, and even the smile on your face as you say it, you know the truth of that. You know the truth of that.
Mm-hmm.
So the best thing that you can do is to live free every day, free of that fear.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice.
Okay, so my fear is my fear of dying young. And so some of this is verbose, but I was doing it for me and not your style, just to be. And why, and I will miss out on my kids and grandkids' graduations, weddings, etc. And that makes me sad. Why they will go on, because I have 4 kids and 3 out of 4 are married, and there's 10 grandkids so far. Why they will go on and be fine without me, which I feel unimportant, and why my contributions to them and my presence now aren't enough to leave a mark on their lives, so I feel inadequate. Why I'm not as charismatic, skilled, people knowledgeable to know how to impact them like my mom and my sister are, and they're the 2 narcissists. They are. And I feel small and worthless. Why? Because I reject myself and don't accept who I am in this area versus who I was pressured to be and was before getting sick. Oh, my medical illness. And I feel shame. Why? It's not enough. I'm not enough to validate my self-worth and acceptability in society. It has to come outside of me, i.e. like a frame of reference. And I feel helplessness. Why? Because I've talked myself into it, and I feel anger at myself. Why? Because it is a lie. This is the key part. It's a lie. The truth is I'm an accomplished, capable, loving, teachable, long-term abstinent, and consistent worker of the 12 steps who God has given great grace to, restore me to sanity daily, enables me to regularly have the intuitive thought or decision because I take the action to practice prayer and meditation, and then so I have good judgment and the ability to love others effectively, even though I don't have people insight like Mom does. I am asked and called for help a lot. I'm fed up of doing this to myself. And how do I feel? Dignity and self-worth. Why? Because it's true, and God created me this way. That's my turnaround.
All right. So yeah, you did have the turnaround, and what was from all of that analytical work, what is the source of your fear then? Where did you bottom out in that pattern of unpacking?
Just that it's a lie. I lie to myself about who I am and the gifts that I do offer to people. And
yes, I agree with that. But what's the real lie here, as I heard it anyway?
I'm sorry, what?
What's the real lie here to yourself?
That I'm not enough.
That was the bottom line. I'm not enough. And how did you come to that conclusion? What was your litmus test?
Comparing myself to, yeah. Right.
I measure myself from outside rather than from inside. And your turnaround was when you began measuring yourself from the inside.
Correct. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
That's really terrific insight, actually.
Well, it's a fine line, because as you well said today, other people are a mirror.
Yeah.
And
can be if we're using it with balance rather than a mean stick, which I heard you, my mother, my sister, oh my God, and I'm measuring myself against them. And the truth is, you're different than them, but you have gifts that are different from them also. You just don't have the same gifts they do.
Well, that's why I added in here that people ask me help. They asked me to start and lead this group at my church. I mean, people validate my gifts, in other words.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm looking for it in those cases, but I said, wait a second, look what's going on. So that's what I'm saying in a positive way.
Yeah. Right.
So then I took it to, I attempted to do this fear workshop sheet, and I really didn't understand it. So,
right. Well, let's try it. What did you
write? So I just wrote down the name of the fear, my fear of dying young. Why do I have it? I live with an incurable blood cancer. What behavior is manifest? Blank. The rest of it's blank, because I don't.
Well, when you have the fear of dying young,
what
do you behave? What's your action like? How do your feet move? I mean, it sounds like a legitimate fear that you have. I mean, that you have it, whether it's legitimate or not. But
no, it's legitimate. I have a blood cancer, and it's miracle remission.
You have the fear that's based on some evidence. All right. And when you are hijacked by that fear, how do you behave? Or do you become hijacked by that fear?
I really don't. It comes up when I go and get tests and stuff. And if I start future tripping.
Oh, well, that's a behavior.
Okay. So future tripping.
Yeah, future tripping. All right.
And I really don't spend time there, because I really try to put my head where my feet are. But, things happen, and, you think about things like that.
And so if you didn't have this fear of dying, what would be the virtue that you would have?
I don't know. I mean, just in living a day at a time, enjoying the moment.
That's what I wrote down. Live in the moment. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you were to live in the moment, which is probably what you do most of the time, then what's the behavior?
Well, the truth is, I just turn it over to God. I mean, my faith has grown a lot because of all this. So I just trust God over and over again whenever it comes up.
Yeah, I consciously align myself or turn myself, whatever turn myself over to God means to you behaviorally. What does it mean?
I do the third step. I make a decision to turn literally my lifespan.
Okay, so I pray. And then I live as if it's true.
Oh, I definitely do. Yes. Yeah.
All right.
So
as you wrote it out, and now as you've dialogued about it, do you have any comments or experience that you'd like to share?
No. No, I think that it still isn't completely. You put this together as a method for you to kind of work through, yeah, it's not completely logical to me yet, but I guess when I go offline and sit and try
And
to
do a different fear, or maybe more than one that's real for you, a fear that you really feel. And, and once you've unpacked those, then go do the worksheet to see if there's some kind of an experience that you can be more conscious of.
Oh, I really feel this. Trust me. I mean, my cancer can come back any day and I'll die. I mean, it's very sincere and serious, but I just don't let myself go there. I've disciplined myself very well.
Yeah.
I'm hard at it. So yeah. Maybe I guess my comment is maybe it's simpler than I'm making it out to be. And I guess approaching this, I have felt like, kind of like what you said earlier, is that this isn't this horrible, hard experience, because these are all fantasy things. These are not real things. They're real things to me. I mean, this is real and valid, but they're the future and they're not things that have happened. And I can tell you, as most of us can, so many things that we have feared that have not come true.
Right. Yeah.
And I guess that's why there's a part of me that's, and maybe I'm lying to myself, but as a way of coping, I don't know, but there's a part of me that's taking with a grain of salt my whole fear inventory. Not that I'm not, obviously I delved right into it, but I'm not, and I'm wanting to learn everything I can from it, but it doesn't feel as heavy to me as the third and fourth column do, is what I'm trying to say.
Sure. Yeah.
Is that realistic?
As you've talked about it isn't a life quality diminishing fear.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's so real to you, and you have developed a practice of some very legitimate and healthy coping strategies.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. That's awesome.
So I did a few fears, and I ended up at the same place with each one of them. So I just picked one.
Okay.
Fear of speaking in public. And speaking in public for me now would be at a meeting.
Yes.
I'm not working, so I'm not speaking in public, but this has always been a fear.
All right.
So I'm afraid to speak in public. I'm afraid I will not say what people need or want to hear. And if I don't say what they need or want to hear, I will bore them. And if I bore them, they will criticize or not think I'm a speaker who affects their emotions. And if I'm not a speaker who affects their emotions, I will not give them a memorable, life-changing experience. Then I will be invisible and ineffectual. And I'll have no purpose or use, so therefore I will be unnoticed and possibly discarded. I will slowly withdraw and die inside. Nobody, this is so embarrassing. Nobody will ever notice or care. I will be just one less thing to worry about. I won't even be missed by those who said that they cared about me the most. I'm invisible and I was never even here.
All right.
Herb, I am so sick of that.
All right. Yeah, because you've seen it as an underlying theme and pattern.
Oh.
Yeah.
Even when I'm talking to my own children who I know love me, I think I must be boring to them. I have no use. I don't really think they think that.
Well, the problem is you do.
Yes.
Yeah. And you're writing scripts because you're projecting what you think onto other people. Sure. So
how do you get out of that loop?
Well, did you do the worksheet in the Way of Life document?
I did it last year. I'm going to do it this week again.
Okay. You want to try it right now?
Sure.
Okay. So
I have it somewhere.
Well, but we can just do it spontaneously.
Okay.
I think we can.
Okay. I'll try.
So your base fear is I'm invisible. That's what you came to the final conclusion of. that I'm invisible. There's nobody sees me now, and
Nothing's
therefore
here.
never will. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and what would you say would be the answer to what fear comes up when you realize that you are invisible?
That I'm invisible?
What fear?
That people don't like me. There's something not likable. I don't get this response from people, by the way, but that there's just something really defective and not likable, and I'll just be cast aside. I'll be shunned.
Nice word, actually. Shunned is a really good word. Not liked and shunned.
Big one in my family, shunned.
Okay, all right, because it actually happens.
Oh, yes.
All right.
Not in my immediate family, in my family of origin.
Oh, you have experience with it. Yeah, kind of almost PTSD with it.
Yeah.
All right. And when you feel invisible, not liked, and shunned by others, how do you behave?
I think I get I'm in it right now, so I get very confused. I can't gather I don't seem to be able to gather my thoughts. I'm surprised I can even talk right now, to tell you the truth. Gather my thoughts. I almost like stunned, like a deer caught in the headlights. And then I will tend to kind of tap dance around. I was a hairstylist, so I can get real chatty and funny.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Get real busy with it. And that is a camouflage.
Great description of behavior. All right.
Yeah.
So if in fact you reacted, rather than the fear of being invisible, not liked, and shunned, what would be the virtue that would be the opposite of that fear?
The virtue?
Yeah, the strength, the opposite of the fear. What would you say is just pick a word or a phrase or two that's the opposite of fear? The fear of being invisible, the fear of not being liked, the fear of being shunned.
To be authentic, I would think.
Nice.
To be there, to be present.
First of all, all of that is really good. I hope you're writing it down. To be present. What was the other word you said? To be authentic.
Authentic.
Yeah. All right.
By the way, people tell me that I am those things, but when I cycle down into this, gone.
Well, because you know that you can give the symptoms of presence in your chatty and your what did you say? Oh, and your humor. You can give the appearance of present, but you're not really present. You know that that's a cover for your fear.
Yeah.
Well,
when the fear strikes, sometimes I'm not in it, and I'm very authentic. I don't put it on or anything, but boy, when I get afraid like this.
Yeah. So the opposite of the fear would be being authentic, having self-esteem that comes from you, not from other people.
Yeah, gosh, how does that even happen when it's like this, though?
Well, it doesn't become this if, in fact, you have self-esteem.
Yeah.
So it's not about correcting the fear by imposing on yourself some positive affirmation. That's just mental gymnastics.
Yes.
What it really is having the self-esteem that's grown up in you organically, and it's authentic.
Well, and we're taught, I've been working a program for 18 years and taught to do esteemable acts. And I tried to do that.
Yeah,
but boy, I still, I hit 60 and I'm just like going around this same mountain again. It's very painful. It's hard to have relationships with my kids.
Yeah. Well,
and
then, okay. So if in fact you're present and authentic, how would you be behaving? with your kids?
Well, I mean, I won't go into the whole story, but yesterday I was talking to my son. He lives in Europe, and he's just 23, and we're having a conversation, and I realized I was like this. And I thought, and he asked me about a book I was reading, and I couldn't come up with something, and I felt myself wanting to dance around it. Like, I need to entertain my son. He doesn't care. I could just say, listen, I'm all spaced out. I don't know what that book was about. That would be authentic. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
The shame comes over me, and then I think, oh my God. So I don't know, maybe to just tell the truth.
I like that a lot. Authentic would be telling the truth. Authentic would be rigorously honest. Authentic would be transparent. So your son, and he says something about a book, and you go, you know, I'm reading something, I don't even know what it is, and I'm not sure that I could even talk about it right now. It's kind of like yeah.
You know what, Herb? I did say that. And then the shame cycle started in me afterwards, and I practically wanted to kill myself.
Well, then we can go right back to the original fear, I think, and pretty well see it for what it is, speaking in public. That's the fear that you won't be valued by other people in the way you want to be valued. And that's just the primary symptom of dependency, isn't it? Depending on other people. So you asked, well, what can I do about that? Is Dr. Berger uses this term. He's my partner in emotional sobriety workshops. He said, we place our center of gravity deep inside ourselves.
Yes.
Not in my son, not in other people in the 12-step rooms.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel good when people have a positive response to me, but I'm not going there with this sense of I'm going to be a life changer. That what I say is going to be important. You see, your motive was corrupt there. All right. I wrote down some notes, and that was one right in the middle of unpacking. And that's a corrupt motive that, especially in a 12-step meeting, we're there to share our experience. We hope it will help somebody.
Right.
But we're just there to share our experience, both the problems we've had and the solutions that we've come to it, so that other people may learn from that. And again, they may not. They may think that we're irrelevant or whatever else. They may not. I mean, everybody's so wrapped up in thinking about themselves that, quite frankly, yeah.
Well,
so the answer, number one, is to perhaps do a way of life document worksheet for you to then come to the other side of the virtue and the behavior. Although I think you've already seen the truth of that. Being authentic would change your reactions and your feelings within yourself. Mm-hmm. And then the big book is very clear.
Yeah.
It says, we have fear because we don't trust God.
Yes.
And to the extent that we have a trust in the universe, in ourselves, in God, as we don't understand it, we won't have fear. And if, in fact, you continue to have fear anyway, we pray for its removal. Well, the ultimate solution in the big book, in each of the components, resentment and fear and sex, is pray. Now, he takes it a step further in step 10. He said, we pray, yes, but then we talk about it with somebody.
Right.
And so those would be my two recommendations.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for sharing with us.
Sure.
I have started out with one fear, and at the end I have had another. And when you then go to fill out the worksheet. Which fear are you supposed to do it on? The one you originally started with, or the one you end up with, or both?
Well, there's no supposed to.
Oh, okay.
This is a tool. And so what do you want to know?
Well, I of course want to know everything. So I did it on both.
And what would be the answer to your question?
Yeah, my answer was, well, I guess I'll just do it on both. But I just wanted to know if there was supposed to be a certain way.
No.
Okay. All right.
These are really tools and suggestions that you take and see what brings you a sense of, somebody used it earlier, a sense of closure with regard to the work that you're doing, a sense of, oh, I see something. Oh, I experience something. Oh, I feel something.
Well, and of course, you know, I think you even said it again last night. I've done 6 now, so it's getting very clear. I mean, there's definitely a theme, you know, going on. So I definitely see. I can definitely see. I have more to do, but
yeah,
it's.
What would you say then is the primary theme, the underlying conclusion that you come to?
Well, it's kind of a combination of a couple of things, but it's not mattering, you know?
Yes.
Not being enough, not mattering, and worried that everybody else also knows that. And I think that goes back to having it goes back to the self-reliance and the reliance on God, because I have to know that I matter in my higher power's eyes. So it doesn't matter if other people don't think I'm important, you know.
You know where it's so really important for you to think well of yourself? It's not about God. Again, going back to what is the nature of this thing we call God. And I go back to, I love the term, if you really understand it, unconditional love.
Yeah.
Which means that it's overwhelming, the relationship that God has with me. I just don't appreciate it.
Right. Because I'm not in touch, more conscious contact to be more in touch with it, as opposed to letting people overwhelm me.
Yeah. I'm reminded of the work I did about 3 years ago, preparing for a talk on happiness. I knew nothing formally about happiness and that whole world of psychology or research in human development. So I did some work in it. And fortunately, there's been an awful lot of work done in the last 20 years. I mean, a lot of work. In fact, Harvard in the year 2000 created a department of happiness. And out of the research of these psychologists and social sciences, lots of people have written lots of books about it. But the common theme of every one of them is that anybody who wants to be happy, that's their goal, will never be happy. Because happiness is not a product, it's a byproduct. Now, relevant to what you're talking about, there's 2 components to happiness: the byproducts that will create, the actions that will create the byproduct of happiness. Number 1 is having a meaning broader than ourselves. It's critically important to all human beings to have a sense of, where do I fit? What do I mean? What's the context of my life and reality? I mean, it's like critically important. I couldn't have articulated that before I did this work in the happiness thing. The first is having a place where I fit in the world, in my head, in my heart, in my soul, a meaning about my life. Number 1. Number 2, is contributing to other people, helping other people. And I thought, wow, that's step 11 and 12.
Right.
Step 11 gives me the context. All right? I'm a creature created by unconditional love. I'm loved into existence. This is my personal philosophy that comes out of the big book process in steps 2 and 3. And the whole point of my being certainly is to have that relationship and know who I am as a result, but then to spend some time thinking about and helping other people, which is step 12, which in the broadest of sense, not in the program or in the step work specifically, but how can I be aware of the environment that I'm in and making a contribution? Does that help?
Oh, yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And, it's all about getting outside of oneself and worrying about what everybody thinks about what I'm doing or what I'm saying, and just, do the work. And I do make a contribution, but I lose complete sight of it when I listen to all these other things. So yeah, thanks very much. It's been very rewarding.
Well, at the same time, one of the key questions is, how important is other people's opinion about me?
Well, I got to tell you, you said something last night that absolutely was like a miracle for me. I didn't even know till you said it, that for all the years I've been in the program, and there are a few decades here, I've been struggling with this idea that I know that feedback is good, that I know hearing what other people think is helpful. I was in that field. And I could never reconcile it with the fact that I was letting other people's judgments overwhelm me and control me and take over. And you said, there's nothing wrong. As a matter of fact, it's good to know what other people think of us, because it's a mirror.
Yeah.
But it's when we place too much value on that kind of judgment versus what we know in our hearts, what we know from our higher power, that it then turns into a character defect. I will go to my grave thanking you for that one.
Oh, wonderful. Well, see, what happens when you do that, because I've said it before but it's kind of a spontaneous thing, but now I can see how important that sort of image is for people. And so it will help me bring it forward in appropriate circumstances. Great.
I didn't even know that was my issue around all of that people pleasing stuff, but now I do. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much.
Hi, Herb. How you doing?
Yep.
At the beginning of our session, you either asked someone or mentioned someone to somebody, but it was like a bell ringing in my head. Trust translated into behavior. Yes. What does trust look like when it's translated into behavior? So for you, in your life, what does trust look like translated into behavior?
It may be that the words are a little awkward as I expressed them or as you heard them. And I am saying that behavior is the translation of trust.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so then to answer your question, once we've got the words correct, is that I meditate on a daily basis. That's the behavior. Now, do I feel good when I meditate? Possibly not. Do I have a sense of the presence of God when I meditate? Probably not. Do I have any nice feeling or thought that's spiritual when I meditate? Half the time, no. So I'm not there to feel good or to think good or to write poetry or to write books, all of which would be motivation for doing other things. I'm merely there to, if I'm meditating, to receive guidance. So I'm trusting that guidance is available. I'm trusting that there is a loving, caring breath that will inspire me with guidance. It's a play on words because inspire and spirit comes from the Greek word spiros, which means breath. All right. And even taking it further then, as you know from my kind of superficial review of step 11 at the beginning of our workshop many months ago, more than half of my morning practice is a contemplative practice, which is not meditation. So I'm sitting there in the presence of God by my decision that God is present, right, with an invitation to this fictition to change me, to transform me. I sit in the presence of presence, inviting it to change me, to transform me. Do I know that? Do I feel it? Do I see it? No. But I trust that the decisions I made about all of that, the assumptions underneath it, are valid. So trust is, in fact, the behavior that happens based on my decision of faith.
I understand what you were saying now. Thank you so much for your explanation.
I'm glad you asked the question. Yeah, thank you.
So it was about the fear of losing her son, and you were talking about that she really needed to really go back and look at steps 2 and 3,
yeah, and
really work step 3. So I was thinking about it. I also have a son, but I just really enjoy my son, and I enjoy how much I love him.
Wonderful.
But I know that either I'm going to die or he's going to die.
Yep.
And either way, there's going to be pain because we're going to grieve. So the thing is that, so I was going, well, if everybody dies, because, it's fear is a lack of trust and faith, as we were just talking about, and in spirit. And I call my higher power the animating spirit.
Nice.
Yeah. And I do trust, because what it came to was the trust that I have is that I will be able to bear whatever pain comes my way, as far as losing people I love. I've done, I've gone through that. And I was doing some reading by a Buddhist teacher, and they were talking about using grief, and instead of avoiding grief, and instead of using something to shut it down because the pain's so extreme, to open your heart to the grief, to the pain, because it's going to transform your heart. It's going to soften your heart. And that was like, that's like such a interesting way of looking at grief.
Oh, it's totally countercultural. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what I guess that's what I came to was that I've had a lot of rehearsals in my life.
Yes.
For that kind of pain.
Yes.
And I think because I've allowed myself to trust that I won't die if I feel this pain.
Yes.
Then I allow myself to scream and cry and whatever I need to do, and to grieve. And eventually that really sharp grief ends, but there's always a grief, because it's hard to be a human being, because we know.
Well, you might want to challenge your vocabulary. I think grieving is a phenomena that we experience, like you're talking about, inevitably, grieving loss.
Yes.
But I don't believe it continues if it's a healthy process that brings to itself to conclusion after 6 months or 2 years or 5 years, whatever it is. Then there's the memory, which is sad.
Yeah. Okay.
Very different than the grief process.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. That's true.
Well, it's just.
But I know that there's always going to be that feeling of loss of that special loved one.
Depending on the strength of the relationship. Absolutely. Yeah.
So because I was going, well, maybe I need to go back to step 3, but I think I have turned my will and my life over to this.
Sounds like it's a momentary reflection where you spend a day or two or a week or two, whatever the time frame is, kind of processing it, kind of getting it in perspective. If you need to do more work, you'll do it. But right now you're just having an experience with a feeling or an awareness, and you got to digest it.
Well, as I was doing that, the fear thing, it led me. So I had, to like this fear of falling in love, and seeing beneath that this fear of intimacy with women, perhaps because my mom was very domineering, and that was just leading that, sort of following that sort of that progression, and then just seeing, well, how can I be open just to, as a male, to women in general, just in all my dealings, and the sense of that fear of intimacy and things like that, and being open to that.
Yeah. Well, you've really wonderfully opened up the conversation to the broadest and healthiest scope. So thank you so much for that. Yes, exactly 100%. How can I be a better human being in this physical and emotional reality? Yeah, thank you very much.
And this is probably coming from my perfectionist orientation.
All right.
And the fear of public disapproval.
Yes.
To be performing at the top of my game, particularly in work professionally.
Sure.
And I find it so hard, but I've got much better.
Yeah.
I don't react anymore. I do give a considered, but the desire to give a bit of a dig, and the retaliation, working very, very hard on that. A lot of fear around younger managers, hot shots coming through the system. And trying to be reasonable about that, and trying to be supportive of them. Yeah. And, that I got support in my time as well. And a fear that I've had for a long, long time would be aloneness.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, as my recovery have progressed, I yearn for it.
Yeah. Yes.
And I've learned to do quiet time, and
right.
So that's, and yet at times when my mood can drop, that isolation depression, I call it. It's not a depression, and I'm not isolated, but it's that me and self-pity I go into, right. And that can be hard to shake.
Yeah.
And you talk about that reality, knowing what reality is wisdom.
Yeah.
And quite often I'm way off reality when I'm like that.
Well, but the learning and consciousness of that, and then the correction of that, that's what leads to wisdom, right?
Yes.
Yeah. When we observe and are aware that we've made a mistake by our standards,
yes,
we don't beat ourselves up, but we're very glad that we are aware that we made a mistake and can correct it And as we learn from making mistakes and taking the corrective action, we develop progressive wisdom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I do, even in my family scenario, I'm much quicker to apologize, you know. And
careful with that one, because I can see where that could become a method of manipulation, both self and other people. So just just be conscious of, again, managing that part. But going back to the fear of public disapproval, did you unpack that?
Yes, I felt very much it was very I'm very wedded to the Enneagram and around being a 1.
Great. Oh, you're a 1? Mm-hmm. You're built to be a perfectionist.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
You know, and
it's good to know that, though, isn't it?
Pardon me?
It's good to know that.
Yes. Right. Yes. And it really helps me recognize other Enneagram people around me and why they're behaving the way they are.
The biggest benefit of the Enneagram, what we're talking about, is a theory in psychology about personality development. It's called the Enneagram, E-N-N-E-A, gram, and E-N-N-E-A is 9 in Greek, and there are 9 different variations on a personality, 3 primary, 1 from the head, 1 from the heart, and 1 from the gut. I'm not going to get into that, but we'll have more conversation about that in steps 6 and 7, because it's really about the shadow, looking at the shadow side in us. And it's a wonderful spiritual tool, and that's the benefit of it. So I'm glad you brought it up. With that tendency then of perfectionism, and you have this fear of public disapproval, where did it take you in the unpacking in terms of the underlying sort of?
In that, when I talked to my sponsor with it, in that, you know, going back to childhood, but that I actually, what I do is good enough.
Oh, wow. That would be cool.
Yeah. But, and it's to accept that, you know, that child in me that wants to be the best little girl. And, you know, as an adult now, what I do is good enough.
Yeah. As I mentioned, there is a worksheet in the Way of Life document that is not connected to the big book, but it comes out of my human development experience for the turnaround, like we have with resentments in column 3 and 4. I try to help myself have that turnaround in fear. What would the opposite look like? And part of the question that I would ask you to ask yourself is, what are you defending? When you have a fear of public approval, what is it that you're defending? You don't need to answer that right now, but I'm inviting you to answer that question for yourself, because I do believe it gets underneath to the core of the fears of what I'm defending. And for myself, I was defending my delusion, my illusion, my false self of not being enough, of not being good enough, of low self-esteem. And so I was overcompensating for that feeling which had been developed in the family of origin, which wasn't true. And I had to develop the antidote that you just talked about is, well, what I do is actually quite good, and it's enough.
Yes.
And it's enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And I've also began to share my feelings, you know, that there's a strength in showing your weaknesses to my team.
In a safe environment.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, because there's barracudas out there that will take advantage of that vulnerability.
Yes, but there's a great strength in it too.
Well, and that's the benefit of a group like this, where we've learned to really trust one another.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you so much, Herb.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Very courageous, everybody. Thank you for your sharing. Please join me in the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Thank you so much.